Well, if you've been watching my videos throughout the day, you know we have a major breaking update in the Google censorship story. I have another story here from The Verge. Google warns its employees that Pride protests are against the company's code of conduct. A leaked internal memo has Googlers concerned about whose free speech the company is protecting. Once again, a political stance taken by Google about what people at the company can or can't do. Now, this story wasn't as big as the Veritas expose, so naturally this is falling to a 6 p.m. video. But the most important thing, the censorship is confirmed. As far as I can, look, we have an employee email saying, if you missed the story, an employee email saying straight up, these people, their politics, strip them of their features, okay? We have now seen people no longer getting recommended. It's confirmed, period, plain and simple. So here's what I'm going to say. timcast.com/donate. Support my work if you like what I'm doing. For those that aren't listening on the podcast, Tim Pool Daily Show on all podcast platforms. Seriously, every day at 6:30, you will get my full hour-and-a-half content available. Listen whenever. I seriously urge you to find me on the podcast platform. It's doing fairly well. And the only reason Google will keep succeeding with this censorship is because we keep using the platform. Now, I will say this. I'll keep using, YouTube and Google so long as I can, but they've already censored some of my content, and I'm concerned they will do it in the future. So I'm hedging my bets pretty hardcore. I would also say, share this video if you think I deserve it. YouTube is no longer recommending my videos at the same capacity they used to. It's down substantially. It's fine. Because ultimately, if you think my content is good, you can share it. If not, I don't deserve it anyway. Plain and simple. And I'm going to rely on good old word of mouth, as should everybody else. So don't just share my videos. If you like other YouTube creators that you know are being impacted, share their content too, plain and simple. But let's read the news. From The Verge, employees are allowed to peacefully protest YouTube or Google during the Pride Parade, as long as they are not marching with Google in an official capacity. According to internal memo sent to employees, anyone who chooses to walk the parade as a representative of Google and voice any protest will be considered in violation of Google's code of conduct. The discussion came out of a broader conversation among Gagler's listserv, one of Google's LGBTQ groups, about petitioning San Francisco Pride to remove the company's float from this weekend's parade. Some employees plan to march with Google while also visibly demonstrating against YouTube's recent policy decisions with signs or t-shirts, according to screenshots shared with The Verge. When one Googler asked if this would be tolerated by the company, an inclusion lead said no. Employees are free to make whatever statement they want personally, apart from our corporate-sponsored float contingent, the inclusion lead told the members of Gaglers, but they are not permitted to leverage our platform to express a message contradictory to the one Google is expressing. Boom. There it is. Once again, Google is saying flat out, fall in line with corporate. And these are people who are at odds with Steven Crowder. These are people who are challenging Google's decision. They have every right to protest, and I would stand beside them as they did. If you want to, in terms of free speech defense, I'm not saying like there's, look, I have absolute, I would absolutely defend LGBTQ rights. The point I'm trying to make is in terms of free speech, if they want to stand up and say, I contest, then they should be allowed to do so. Google doesn't care about you or me, and I think a lot of their decisions aren't necessarily political, but it's about protecting their bottom line. We've seen the email, so there are employees who are overtly political and are taking political action, period. But here we can see it from a corporate standpoint. They don't care about the left. The corporate side doesn't. They just don't want to look bad in the press. They say, internally, LGBTQ employees at Google have expressed anger and exhaustion over YouTube's recent policy decisions regarding conservative YouTuber Steven Crowder and Vox journalist host Carlos Maza, which earlier this month became a flashpoint in the ongoing controversy over how YouTube moderates its platform and decides when and for what offense it punishes certain channel owners. In a recent letter to Google's LGBTQ employees, CEO Sundar Pichai said that he echoes YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki's recent apology to the community and vowed the company would be taking a hard look at its harassment policies. The decision to stifle a would-be protest is frustrating to some employees who see it as especially ironic, given YouTube's dedication to free speech. Yeah, right. YouTubers who use our platform and sometimes get significant revenue get to claim free speech to keep using our platform. But LGBT Googlers get no free speech to say that Google doesn't represent us, one tells The Verge. That's ironic at best, but hypocritical. Specifically ironic, trying to curb our speech on the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall March riots. Now look, let me say this. If Google doesn't want you in a parade on their float, which was private from the get-go, that I can kind of understand. YouTube is marketing itself as YouTube, like for you, for the public, for everyone to use. And they enjoy protections under the premise that they're a neutral public forum for people to engage. If they're going to censor people now, I think it's a problem. It is different that Google has a float and they don't want you on their float protesting. I can understand that. And it also makes sense that they don't want you wearing their company's shirts when you protest. However, I still land on the side of free expression and believe if you're a Google employee who wants to contest their decision, you have a right to do so. What I see here is that behind closed doors, Google makes overt political decisions. They deny it publicly. But even when it comes to their own faction trying to protest what they're doing, they're not going to allow you. That's called authoritarianism. Maybe now you will understand why it's a problem to allow a massive multinational corporation the right to police speech. They will stop you. Sure, they might agree with you on paper with certain policy ideas, but I believe it's all about the bottom line. When it comes down to it, they will tell you to your face, you're not going to speak up against us. Just like they won't, you're lucky you get it better than they do. That's authoritarianism, period. Google has no problem censoring, restricting certain political viewpoints, certain political channels. And those on the left clap and cheer. Good, I'm glad they're doing it, they say. But what happens then when you say, we don't like it that you didn't go far enough? They smack you down and tell you to fall in line because you don't have any special privileges. You're just lucky you're not them. It's two kids in the house, and one parent, whips on the other kid, and kid A gets beat up, kid B laughs and says, aha, you're getting beat up, good, you're the bad one, and then he gets smacked in the face when he tries to challenge the parent. So let's see, they go on to say, Rebecca tweeted, today Google told employees that while marching in the Google contingent in the SFP Pride Parade, any protest against YouTube's current policies, interpretation of policies, and so forth would be considered a violation of Google's communications policy. Hashtag no pride in YouTube. How exactly employees would be punished is unclear. When one employee asked for clarification, the original poster of Google's decision said that employees would need to contact the Code of Conduct team for any further questions, although employees are allowed to do so outside of company groups. Some employees say it's too late for them to participate in official Pride parades in any other capacity. With Pride Month drawing to a close, these cities and many others will hold their official festivities at the end of June. For employees getting ready to celebrate Pride, one tells The Verge, this means that in practice you either protest or you march. Google was not immediately available for comment. What do you think happens when you violate, employee guidelines? I'd imagine you might get written up. I also imagine you might get fired. So look, I've said this time and time again. I feel like it falls on deaf ears, or it's possible that YouTube, Twitter, they just want the echo chamber. They don't want anyone to see new videos from me, so it requires word of mouth. I ask you to share the content. But one of the big challenges with getting rid of suggestions, I still get suggested quite a bit, and my channel's doing better than ever, but they are down, so there's a throttling going on. We need to expose people to new ideas to expand their minds and challenge these systems. One thing I noticed on Twitter, you may have seen this, is that many tweets appear as tweet unavailable. However, they're not blocked, muted, banned, suspended, and there's other ways you can view them. Those tweets really do exist. It would seem that there's some kind of algorithmic system to restrict you from seeing certain comments that are totally available to other people. Why? Maybe these platforms like the echo chamber. They don't want the left to hear me talk about free speech and defend their right to protest Google's policies. They have a right to protest Google, absolutely. I don't care if they're employer or otherwise. It's almost like unionizing, right? If I have a company and my employees are going to protest me, well, you know what? I think they have a right to do so, and that's just the way it works. But think about this: those who are upset with Google are being smacked down by Google, told they can't protest. You might lose your access to resources. Welcome to an authoritarian regime. You clap and cheer when the regime does what you want. But what do you do now when they point the sword at you? What you complain about it? You leak the documents. I think it's really funny that The Verge was able to get a hold of a leaked document because Google is inherently left-wing. We've seen it. We've heard the testimony and the emails. So when something bad happens, they'll leak those documents. It's unfortunate there aren't more people at the company willing to leak documents exposing their political bias, but at least now we're seeing that Google doesn't care about free speech, even for them. It's corporate. It's a machine. It's an authoritarian machine that will suppress speech of anyone that dare oppose them. Unfortunately, it's usually conservatives because they do hold some left-wing views. But when it comes to the left, they will knock you down too. More segments to come. Stick around. I'll say it a millionth time. The podcast is available on all platforms. Tim Pool Daily Show. If you like the content, share it, comment, whatever. You can find me on other platforms. Minds.com/Timcast. I'll see you in the next story.